Hey, everybody. I am super pumped to have John Glowa with me today and his cute little kitty cat. This is a subject that is near and dear to me. We're going to talk about the status of wolves here in the state of Maine. Those who know me know that I did my undergraduate and graduate research on the wild canids of our region. So I'm really excited to have John Glowa with us. He founded the Maine Wolf Coalition way back in 1994 when a wolf was shot and killed near Moosehead Lake in north central Maine. He has had a distinguished career. He's a Maine native, but all throughout New England, he has served in governmental roles, primarily here in the state as he retired from the role of environmental protection. So he knows what he's talking about, and he's been around the woods a while of Maine, the North Woods of Maine. Really excited to have him and to ask him some probing questions. But first, John, I'd like for you to really just tell us about yourself, and the follow up question to introducing yourself to everyone beyond what I've just said is, tell us why wolves. So have at it. Introduce yourself and take us down that road.
Sure. Thank you, Jonathan. I appreciate the opportunity. Um, First thing I need to let folks know is that I'm a Maine native, seventh generation. I was born in Presque Isle. My grandfather was a potato farmer in Blaine. My grandmother was a school teacher. So my roots here in Maine, and especially Aroostook County, are very, very deep. I don't want folks to think that I'm an outsider trying to tell them what to do because I'm certainly not an outsider, and I'm certainly not trying to tell folks what to do.
That is an
What I
that is an
what I am
important.
trying to do is simply educate folks.
Yeah, and
Go ahead.
let me just jump in there and say, hearing you say that, I understand why you want to say that. One of the biggest criticisms, of course, of organizations like Restore the Maine Woods is that they're primarily people from, you know,
Away, sure.
Boston and Southern New England and all like that. And so that's one of the primary criticisms, is that their funding and their leadership are actually not in Maine. And you're saying, no, I'm leading this as a native Mainer with a passion and a heart for Maine, right?
You're looking at our office, okay, and we have basically four people who are volunteers, including myself, who are working on this. We're all volunteers. We do it because we feel that it's the right thing to do. Money comes out of our own pockets, and we have a fellow by the name of John Way. John is a probably the foremost eastern coyote expert on the planet. He's written several books. We have Jennifer Rosato, who's a school teacher, and she takes the phenomenal videos and photographs that we were able to post. And we have a young lady by the name of Maeve Rogers, who is working out in Minnesota with the Voyagers Wolf Project. So I think we have some pretty good talent on our team, and I think it shows in our results.
Yeah, I
Um,
know
uh,
John Way pretty well. When this was probably 15 years ago, when I was finishing my undergraduate program and needed to do my undergraduate thesis. I decided to, the genetics were being done already. The hybridization between wolves and coyotes had already been established. So John and I talked at length about something that I could do that would be meaningful. So what I did was a morphometric survey, basically, looking at, when you have a litter of puppies, from two different breeds, one of them looks like dad and one of them looks like mom. But after a while, if you keep that cross going, there's a balance that eventually takes place. So my question for my study was, what is this balance? That has, what do we see in the coy wolf, the Canis latrans variant? What do we see as having happened um, morphologically, physiologically, and what does that tell us about, what the role they're playing in the environment? So, yeah, I'm very familiar with John's work.
So our folks can understand what you did. Can you please explain morphometrics and morphology?
Yeah. So you morphology is basically you're looking at the pelage, the color of the coats. You're looking at the size. You're looking at the shape. Not only mass, but where they are larger than a traditional coyote, where they are, where they fall within the parameters of a traditional coyote, and what those measurements tell us about the role that they're playing in the environment. So yeah, and I don't know that John followed up with me after that research, but it was a great opportunity for me to do something that was different, and then I carried that research on when I went to Antioch. But I didn't mean to interrupt. I want you to
Nope,
continue telling
it's
us
good.
why you're doing what you're doing, and we can
Yep,
get into all of
yep.
that.
I need to let folks know that I am not anti-hunting. I'm a non-hunter. I choose not to hunt. I used to be a fisherman, but to be honest with you, I really have since my boys have grown up. I really have lost too much interest in fishing. But I don't begrudge people who want to fish. I don't begrudge people who want to hunt for the right reasons. And when I say the right reasons, I mean fair chase hunting, hunting for food, hunting for sport, hunting for trophies, hunting just for fun, the fun of it. I disagree with, and I strongly oppose. So, am I anti-hunting? Absolutely not. Am I against killing for fun? I absolutely am. I also want to point out too that there's been a 30-year misconception that I support reintroducing wolves to Maine. I and the Maine Wolf Coalition have always opposed reintroducing wolves, and the reason for that is because there's no need to do that. And our goal is to simply let nature take its course. We want to allow wolves in Canada to survive. We want to allow wolves in the Northeast U.S. to survive, and they are, in the Northeast U.S., they are protected under federal law, under the Endangered Species Act. Unfortunately, the federal government does not enforce that here in the Northeast, and the state governments don't want wolves. So the wolves have a pretty tough time by encouraging the killing of so-called coyotes. The governments are also encouraging the killing of wolves. And a real controversial statement that I'll make is there are no coyotes in Maine. There are no coyotes in the entire Northeast. All of these animals, every single animal, it's either a coyote wolf hybrid, and some of them are wolves. There are no pure coyotes in the Northeast, and people who claim that these animals are coyotes claim that they've killed many so they know what they look like. Well, anybody who's only hunted in Maine or who's only hunted coyotes in the Northeast knows what these animals look like, but these animals aren't coyotes. So
Yeah.
that's I think an important point that
It
distinction
is,
needs
and
to be made.
I'm glad that you went ahead and threw that out there because it was something that I was going to ask you about because I've seen you make that statement publicly before. There are no coyotes in Maine, and while the coy wolf population here doesn't, I think have an they didn't 15 years ago have an official designation as its own species yet. It was moving dramatically in that direction even 15 years ago, with the variant edition. And so what I want to do just for a second, and then I want you to jump in and add to it or correct anything that you see that I'm off on here.
Sure.
Basically, the backstory for our listeners, for people who want to bring themselves up to speed on Maine, is when Europeans came to North America, they brought with them their cultural detestation of wild canids, specifically wolves, and extirpated wolves moving from the East Coast to the West Coast. Coyotes, being the wily, brilliant animals that they are, saw the vacuums that were being created, the gaps in the ecology that was being created throughout the east, and so they start backfilling, they start moving from west where coyotes are native and start moving east. The coyotes that we have specifically here in New England most likely came to us north of the Great Lakes through the Algonquin National Park region, and what I would always explain to people is gray wolves are old world wolves, but the eastern timber wolf is a new world wolf. And where gray wolves and coyotes overlap, there's war, and wolves are always, the gray wolves are always trying to kill them, or boot them out of their territory. But when the new world coyote and the new world eastern timber wolf came into contact with each other, hybridization occurred. And so, to John's point, he's absolutely right. What we have here is something at least new for us. This may have happened before, before human history here, but two New World canids, the eastern timber wolf and the coyote hybridized. And so what we have here in northern Maine is something truly unique. Would you agree with that overview?
Well, I'd say for the most part, I mean, this hybridization has also occurred in the Great Lakes and New York, parts of Ohio, farther south, southeast. But it's safe to say in the eastern U.S. and certainly in the Northeast, Newfoundland, Labrador, New Brunswick, etc., it's the same animal, and it's a coyote wolf hybrid, varying degrees of wolf and coyote DNA in the animal. I would point out too that it's important to note that people who claim that geez, wolves are much bigger than coyotes, you'd be able to tell the difference, blah 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 blah. Eastern wolf females average about 45 to 55 pounds. Eastern wolf males average about 60 to 65 pounds. That's about the same size as the wolves that live in the upper Great Lakes in northern Minnesota. So a large coyote wolf hybrid is virtually the same size as an average or smaller eastern wolf. And that's one of the reasons why steps should be taken to regulate the killing of these coyote wolf hybrids, because it's virtually impossible to distinguish them from
Yeah.
wolves. Your chances of seeing a 90 or 100-pound wolf in the woods are very, very, very slim. Your chances of seeing a 45 to 65-pound eastern wolf, I would say, are certainly there. And the reason I say that is because eastern wolves live only within 60 miles of New York and 75 miles of Maine. An animal can cover that distance in 1 to 2 days. So it's no huge problem for wolves to cross the St. Lawrence River and come into to New York and come into the rest of New England. So
What
the size differential there is basically false. People's assumptions
Yeah,
are
and
false.
there's so many things that you're triggering in my mind that I want to talk with you about and ask you about, that
Let's go for
that
it.
I,
Let's
I
go
can't
for
keep it, I can't keep up. But one,
this is, as you know, this is a
yeah,
hugely complex
it
issue.
is, and usually it is the people who refuse to commit the time and thought to any issue, be it ecological, political, religious, whatever. It's those people who usually are the most staunchly entrenched in their position because they haven't really exposed them. So, not to get off on
This
that
is an
not to get
opportunity.
off on that tangent, one thing that I had to do when I was doing my presentations, um, at university, was I had to show people, like, this is a southwestern coyote. This is
Right?
the canid that lives in the Northeast. This is the Canis latrans variant, the hybrid that lives in the Laurentian Hills ecoregion, and show them pictures back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and then start giving the stats on the size. The average, I think, the average in the 26 um, wild canids in my study, the average, I think, and it's been a long time since it's been about 15 years, but the average was about 40 to 45
Mm,
pounds.
yeah.
And I had 40 to 42 pounds, I think. But I had a couple that were 48-pound males.
Sure.
And that was not uncommon. And I was hearing, and I wish I could have included them in my study, some that were even much larger. You know, if you put a southwestern coyote next to a Maine, putting in air quotes, coyote,
Right.
you would know immediately, that these are two very different animals. And the role that they're playing in the ecology of the region is very different as well.
Yeah.
Would you have anything to add to that?
Yeah. Yeah. I'd like to add that for the sake of simplicity, let's call these Maine canids coyotes. Is that okay?
It's going to make things easier for me.
Okay, sure. So for the sake of simplicity, these Maine coyotes and eastern wolves are very, very, very similar with their diet habits because eastern wolves aren't that much bigger than the coyotes we have here. Eastern wolves probably prey on deer a little bit more. Typically, they're not big enough to take down moose. Very rarely they're able to take down a moose, but that's very, very rare. I would say that both of these animals are not carnivores. They're both omnivores, and they're opportunists. And by omnivores, I mean they eat plant material and they eat animals. They will eat live animals. They will eat dead animals. They will kill animals. They will eat blueberries. They will eat raspberries. They will eat whatever they need to eat to stay alive. Summertime is really, really tough on these animals because the deer fawns can outrun them, and a lot of the animals, birds and stuff, can fly away, and they have a really hard time finding food. So you'll find scat out in the woods. It's full of berries. It'd be canid scat, full of berries because that's what they're eating.
Yeah.
Um,
I was,
so
I,
so their diets are very, very, very similar. They'll both eat meat and they'll both eat berries and things like that.
yeah, I, and I'll go ahead and share this with you. I know I told you I would send this to you and I didn't get the opportunity. But the results of my research actually brought out some of what you're saying right now. Although I did morphometrics on every part of the body, it was the dentition that gave us the biggest aha moments. The teeth, the Swiss Army knife, if you would, of the local canids was the biggest
Mm.
aha moment for our research. Um, we measured the sagittal crest and compared it to Eastern timber wolf. By we, I mean me, and with the coyotes, the
Hmm. Hmm.
zygomatic arch. I mean everything, and what I came down to, the it was interesting, and this is really interesting, and so you can only draw inferences from what I'm about to say. I know that this is not conclusive, but this is my conviction based on what I saw. The canines on any canid is the killing tooth. It's the saber. It's the killer. And what was interesting in the study was that although our local coyotes are significantly larger than traditional coyotes, their canine teeth, their killing teeth, were not significantly larger. They were on the upper end of the coyote spectrum for a killing apparatus,
Hmm.
but they were
Hmm.
not outside of the pale of coyote. But what was off the charts, um, of coyote and well within wolf eastern timber wolf parameters, and this was really surprising to me, so much so that it was crowding the other teeth in the mouth, were the carnassials, the big bone crushers and
For sure,
and
sure.
and meat hackers in the back of the mouth. And so what that suggested to me and suggested to my professors, and I know this isn't conclusive, this is just my conviction based on it, is that they're not necessarily killing larger prey in the Northeast than coyotes are elsewhere, but they are consuming larger prey than they are.
Hmm.
And what I mean by that is scavenging. If you think about a gut shot moose or a gut shot deer that runs off into the woods and dies somewhere, or
A roadkill.
a roadkill, a car hits something, it
Yeah.
goes off in the wintertime, the only competition they have, the black bear, is sleeping, And so they are serving this job of, and I saw it firsthand because I was glad to hear you say you're not opposed to hunting completely. And I want to circle back to that. But I did some trapping for this morphometric study. And what I saw, I had a local farmer bring out, I have 50 acres here now. Then I had 30 acres, but I had a local farmer bring out a lot of his carcasses from his cattle and just dump them. And this was in the middle of winter. And what they would do is they would just set up shop on the carcass. They would eat until they couldn't eat anymore, go sit in the shade, digest the food, watch the carcass, and make sure, to run any other scavengers off away that came to get it. And so they were just a meat processing plant, definitely scavenging on larger bones, scavenging on larger meat, but not necessarily killing larger prey. And
Mm.
what further supported that to me is that I've seen lots of videos from friends of mine in the Allagash that are guides of coyotes playing with deer. And,
Mm.
and so what I gather from that is, yes, opportunistic hunters and opportunistic feeders. And these guys, every time, let me say this. Was it 2008, 2009, we had a very severe winter. And that was about the time that I had a debate with the leader of a local coyote extermination organization that calls itself a conservation organization. I had a debate with them about the perceived value of trying to manage game species by controlling predator numbers and why that doesn't work, and trying to have that conversation with them. But what happens is everyone's like, oh, you can't tell me because I saw a deer's carcass hanging from a tree branch and completely devoured. And I'm like, you know what? Coyotes don't climb trees. So let me tell you what happened. The snow depth was so high that's
Mm.
where it was because
Mhm.
we pick the species that we like. White-tailed deer are not indigenous to northern Maine, but it's a desirable game species, so we want to manage for them. They are just as invasive as the Maine coyote is, but we don't like the coyote and we like the deer, so we're going to pick sides or whatever. But if I were a coyote and there's 6 feet of snow on the ground and deer are up to their necks because they're not physiologically adapted to living here, they're up to their necks, they're starving to death, they can't move around very well, they're freezing to death. Is a coyote going to take advantage of that? Darn Skippy is going to take advantage of that. And I don't blame him. But that is the symptom. The real problem is that when we have those 1 out of 10 year winters here, white-tailed deer, Virginianus is in their name for a reason. They're just not adapted to really deal with it that well.
I'm taking notes um, because you're giving a ton of really good information. Um, I want to go back to you talking about playing with deer. My guess is they may be actually be testing those deer.
Absolutely.
They're looking for any kind of a weakness, I would say.
Absolutely.
One of the things that affects deer in growing parts of the country is what's called chronic wasting disease, and it's always fatal. And it hasn't been found in Maine yet, but that doesn't mean it isn't here. Um, One role that these coyotes and wolves can play is to catch and kill deer that have chronic wasting disease to help minimize its spread. And as far as coyotes or wolves killing everything, and I mean that's what we hear. Based on science. Now, I'm all for science. Um, Unfortunately, the wolf issue is 99% politics and 1%
Mm-hmm.
science, and so that's something that we're up against. But even in places like Minnesota, wolves are only successful, I believe, once in every 10
Mm-hmm.
attempts of to catch a deer. Most of these animals are too fast for them. They can outrun them. They can outsmart them. They're lucky, whatever. And as far as wolf numbers go, and even coyote numbers, they're self-regulating. People don't have to kill them to control the population. What controls the population, number one, is the number of prey available. And number two, they control their own populations. They're what's called self-regulating.
Mm-hmm.
The number one natural cause of wolf mortality is a wolf. Wolves will kill wolves that come into their territory. They'll kill whatever. Um, they'll kill other wolves. It's called intraspecific strife. So they regulate their own populations. They establish territories which they pretty much stick to, and essentially they mind their own business. And the size of the territory, the number of wolves is determined by the availability of prey. If there's a lot of prey, you will have more wolves and you will have smaller territories. If the prey is few and far between, you'll have less wolves and they'll have much, much, much larger territories. So the fallacy that we need to control these animals simply isn't true. And those folks who believe in science should understand and accept that they don't need to go out there and kill these
Yeah.
animals. Another point that needs to be made when you talk about science, there is no science whatsoever to show that killing coyotes benefits the deer population, increases deer numbers, or really has any effect whatsoever on deer numbers. What it does do is it allows deer that are sick, that are unfit, whatever, to survive, because these coyotes and wolves would normally cull these sick animals. So the you know, when we say we want to let nature take its course, that's what we mean. Allow the predators to do their job, and they've coexisted for over 10,000 years, and wolves didn't wipe out deer or moose or caribou. Who did? We did.
Right.
So
You know, we see the same thing with here in northern Maine, the northern goshawk and the Canada lynx. What happens is their primary prey is the snowshoe hare, and the snowshoe hare has I think it's a 7 to 8 year boom bust
boom bust,
cycle,
right?
and it's not the predators that are causing the bust. It's they themselves who have overgrazed their habitat, and so then
Yep.
their numbers start to come down. And what we discover is that, as you just said, the predator numbers follow in the charts, follow the
Right.
prey numbers up, and then follow the prey numbers back down, and then follow the prey numbers up, then follow the prey numbers back down, not the other way around. And I will add to what you just said, and all of that was absolutely accurate about predator control being futile. Not only does it not, there's no evidence to show that it helps deer populations. There is evidence, as you said, that it allows substandard, you know, deer to continue
Sure.
passing on their genes instead of the healthier ones to do so. But also, there's actually some evidence to suggest that predator control tournaments can actually increase the number of coyotes in the region. And boy, try explaining that to someone. And I'm going to try to explain it just really briefly here and then let you jump in. But what I try to explain to people is even with our coy wolves, they're not as wolf-like in their behavior, but they're not as coyote-like either. They have family units, and their yearlings stick around sometimes 2 years, sometimes 3 years. You know, it's not as tight knit as a wolf pack, but it's definitely not as loose as a coyote one. And what I tell people is the alpha pair ensures that those juveniles are not breeding. This is their territory. And when a hunter kills that alpha pair, now it's just like a whole bunch of teenage kids whose sexual hormones are going crazy with no parental supervision. What's going to happen? They're all going to be breeding, and you're going to have cubs
Two or
everywhere.
th- 2 or 3 litters where otherwise you might have only one litter. Yeah.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And try to, some folks pick and choose the science they want to believe. That's the science, folks. And if we can get more folks to understand that, instead of just hating these animals, or going out and killing for fun, or going out because they think that they're doing a service. They're not. They're doing exactly the opposite of what they think they're doing. So if we can, educate even one person
And
with them to
I'll
stop killing these animals, we've succeeded, I
I'll
think.
I'll go a step further. I'll go a step further and say that you can ask a hunter, and a hunter will tell you he loves white-tailed deer. The white-tailed deer hunter will say, "I love
Mhm.
white-tailed deer. I respect that animal. I want to hunt that animal, and I reverence it." I remember the first time that I harvested a white-tailed deer. There was just such an emotion that came over me that I it was almost instinct. I couldn't help myself. I immediately just put my hand on the animal and thanked God for that contribution to my family. So like I felt that and so hunters say they feel that so often. And what I tell them is, why do you feel like you have to hate the coyote? Why do you feel like you have to have this visceral hatred? It's another animal to be respected. It's another animal to be reverenced, just like all of the other animals out there. But for some reason, they have this mentality of, oh, fair chase when it comes to the white-tailed deer, but extermination when it comes to the coy wolf. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. And people have been brainwashed, and they've been brainwashed by people who outdoor writers. Frankly, they've been brainwashed by Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife, and you know, by each other. And I don't know how we get past that. The fact of the matter is, the weakest link in the chain is not coyotes, and it's not hunters. It's winter. A bad winter will kill up to a third of Maine's deer population, which last I knew was over 300,000 animals. So a bad winter will kill 100,000 or more deer. Maine's coyotes and wolves would kill a tiny, tiny, tiny fraction of that. And I forgot my other
No,
point, but
that's great. That's
but
awesome. And
it's the winter,
yes,
and it's not predators, and frankly, it's not hunters.
yeah, the predators are a symptom of the problem. They're not the core problem. I agree with you 100%. I also spent 2 years studying white-tailed deer winter survivability, and up here in northern Maine, we have all of these deer wintering yards that we've set aside and conserved so the deer can survive the winter. And we put tracking collars on these deer, and some of them are traveling 20 and 30 miles, but they're not going to those wintering yards. They're going right.
That's exactly
They're going.
that's exactly they're going to the food.
They're,
That's exactly right.
they're going to the communities.
They're going right into
They're
town.
going right into town where people are going to feed them because they're not physiologically adapted to be here. We love them. We want them here. That's fine. We paid a price for them establishing themselves here. They are the reason why the woodland caribou reintroduction didn't work, because they're immune to parasites that the woodland caribou aren't immune to, and so the overlap wiped them out. Yeah, so I want to circle back to what you were saying about the hunting, and the brainwashing. I I think a great place for us to start, because this just makes sense for everyone, is you know if you want to hunt, sure, we've got plenty of coyotes. If you want to hunt them and you want to have the hunting season, let's have that hunting season. But to have it 365 days a year, day and night, when a mother has her cubs in the den, and you're killing this mother when she has cubs in the den that she's trying to care for, I think that crosses the line. And I think anyone with any reason would see that as unethical. And I think that would be a great place for us to start in in the defense of ethical hunting of these coyotes. The other thing that really bothered me, John, is when I started doing this research. I'm not opposed to hunting coyotes. I'm not opposed to trapping them. But in these predator control tournaments, guys would show up with 20, 30 coyotes in the back of their truck, and are they taking the fur? Nope. Are they harvesting and tanning the fur and processing it and selling it? Nope. You're talking about hundreds of coyotes just getting dumped in a ditch, because I think some of them actually believe that they're doing a service, but a lot of them just, some of them just, they just want to kill something. And, so I think there's a balance. I think predators can be hunted, and I think there needs to be a purpose for it. This is just me, and I want your opinion on this. There needs to be a purpose for it. You're harvesting their fur. You're gonna bring their fur to market, that kind of thing. But doing that when you're going to have 3 to 5 cubs starving to death because you killed its parent, I don't know how in any world someone can see that as fair chase and ethical hunting.
Okay. A lot there. And I took some more notes. The state of Maine has what's called the Coyote Control Program. And you can sign up, and the state will pay you for your time. You don't even have to kill coyotes. The state will pay you for your time and or mileage. And over the years, this program, the average paid per dead coyote is between 150 and $200 per animal, with absolutely zero proven benefit to the deer herd. This is a political established for political
This is
reasons.
news to me, John. I didn't know this. I knew that there were bounties in the West that didn't work, but I didn't know there was a bounty here in the state. I didn't know that.
Well, it effectively is a bounty. It's just not called one. You can get the list of people who are in the program from Fish and Wildlife. They have a printout. You can see how much each one was paid. You can see how many animals each one was killed. Each person killed. Some of them killed no animals and were paid hundreds of dollars for their time because they made the effort. Um, it makes no sense at all. Again, when I say this issue is 99% politics, 1% science, there's absolutely no science behind that program. It's all politics. And as far as ethics go, um, the Maine Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife has a statutory mission. The word ethics is nowhere in that mission. They are not required to mention ethics, to practice ethics, to promote ethics, to teach ethics. And I think that's a problem. I think that, and I think hunters should be required in some way to do ethical hunting. But the system as it is in my opinion very broken. And we have laws that aren't enforced. We have some really bad laws on the books, and I think one of them is this IFW's mission. Where not only that are they not required to consider ethics in their policy making and decision making, they're not even required to consider science. Science is not in their mission.
Yeah.
So, so I think the system was set up in my opinion, to benefit hunters, to benefit people who want to kill things, and it certainly wasn't set up to benefit the animals.
Mhm.
If you take care of the wildlife first, the rest will all follow. If you put the animals first and their welfare first, there will be plenty of animals out there to hunt. So I think that the system is kind of upside down in that respect,
Yeah.
and I think it should be changed.
Can you
But
tell me? Can you tell our listeners and our viewers? I know you talked about 1994, the
yeah,
wolf that was killed, and we've already established that our coyotes here are, um, our coy wolves. Um,
Yeah,
can you tell us what the history has been of the northeastern, the timber wolves' attempts to reintroduce themselves to Maine?
sure. Yeah. To go back to the beginning, though, why do I do this? Um, when I was a teenager, I watched a TV show called The Wolfmen, and I was a teenager at about 18, 12, I think it was, something like that. That's a joke. You're supposed to smile. Um, it was about 1970, and I saw them shooting wolves in Alaska from airplanes, and that memory really stuck with me. And in 1993, it was a bear hunter killed a wolf in Maine, and for me, it was just like I had a smoldering. It was a little fire smoldering inside me, and then that was like throwing gasoline on that fire. And I just wanted to learn as much as I possibly could to try and understand what was happening, to understand what the state was doing or not doing. And at that time, I was in graduate school, and I did a project on the wolf issue in Maine. And I went to Fish and Wildlife, and I talked with a biologist, and I said, "So now that we have a dead wolf, what's Fish and Wildlife going to do about the situation to to educate the public about it?" And he said, "It's not our job to educate the public. It's the public's job to educate themselves." So that's why we founded the Maine Wolf Coalition, to try and gather the information, get the evidence, get the facts, and get that information to the public so the public can be informed and make up their own minds, make their own decisions in terms of what they want and what they don't want, how they want to deal with it. So that's really why we started in the first place, and that's why we're still here, because there's an awful lot that needs to be, that is known, and a lot of information that people need to know. And so we just try to disseminate that information as best we can. Now, as far as the history of wolves here, um, as I said earlier, Maine is 75 miles from Wolf Range in Quebec. New York is 60 miles from Wolf Range in Quebec. The closest wolf here would be the eastern wolf, and there's a population of eastern wolves across southern Ontario and Quebec. These are the smaller animals. They can travel over 1,000 miles during dispersal. They're just like humans in that, when you grow up, you get to be a certain age, you get a little, you want to head out on your own. Well, wolves do the same thing. They want to head out on their own. They'll travel hundreds or maybe even 1,000 miles to look for a mate, to look for their own territory. They can and do cross the St. Lawrence River. It's false to assume that they can't, because that's how our coyotes got here. They crossed the St. Lawrence River. So if they can do it, if lynx can do it, if moose can do it, if fishers can do it, certainly wolves can do it. So we had this wolf killed in 1993. In 1996, we had another one killed in Maine. And later on in succeeding years, we've had wolves killed in New York State, the most recent in 2021. And that animal was not an eastern wolf. That animal was a Great Lakes gray wolf, and that was animal weighed over 80 pounds. We've had wolves killed in Massachusetts, Vermont, New Brunswick, and southern Quebec, south of the St. Lawrence River. So wolves are certainly trying to come back. They're trying to recolonize this region. This region has tens of thousands of square miles of potentially suitable wolf habitat. It has abundant prey, and all we have to do basically is let wolves survive.
Yeah,
It's not that complicated, and it shouldn't be that controversial. It's just basically to stop killing them, or certainly decrease the killing. And as I said earlier too, the state and federal governments encourage people to kill wolves by encouraging people to kill coyotes and or looking the other way. So we've got to have the government do its job.
I think you and I
Simple
both
as that.
know, like you said, a lot of it comes down to politics, and the politics come down to money. If they acknowledge that wolves are here, then they have to spend the money to manage, and because wolves are endangered, if they acknowledge that there are wolves here, they have to then they have to manage and work toward improving their numbers, which is something that they don't want to do. So what they do is they redefine that, don't they? They say what they redefine it and say what we mean by, wolves. There are no wolves in Maine. Is there are no breeding populations of wolves in Maine? I think that's usually the standard.
It's a misnomer to think that the department would have to manage wolves if they were here. There are many, 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 many species that they don't manage, that they know are here. They certainly would not have to manage wolves if they were here. The issue is simply um, saying that, well, we don't have evidence that they're here. We don't have evidence of a breeding population. That's really easy to say when you're not looking for them.
Yeah.
I mean,